Our Old Testament reading for February the 13th, 2022 comes from Jeremiah 17, 5 through 10. The choice of Jeremiah 17, 5 through 10, I believe, is related to the Luke passage. And the Luke contains blessings and curses, as does this reading from Jeremiah. Blessed are those who trust in the Lord, those whose trust is in the Lord. For they shall be like tree planted by the water, sending out its roots to the streams. But cursed are those who trust in mere mortals and make their flesh their strength, whose hearts turn away from the Lord. This gets at what's basically going to be going on in Luke as well. God never disappoints. God's grace, God's strength, God's providence is sufficient. When all else fails, when our strength fails, when our institutions fail, when we fail to live up to our own expectations, God is still there. So, what should we lean on? What should be our first priority in our life? Should we lean on our own strength or on the strength of human institutions, which will eventually fail or disappoint us? Or should we rely on God, who is sufficient? Now, Jeremiah uses the image of the drought and those being planted by a stream and producing fruit because they are with God and they have sunk deep into the grace of God. Now, this image of the tree and the drought occur in Jeremiah. And if you go back to Jeremiah 11, you find that Jeremiah is described as a tree that has bitter fruit. That is, Jeremiah's fruit is the judgment of the Lord. This isn't the sweet fruit of grace, the sweet fruit of redemption and forgiveness, but rather the people have sown a brokenness. They have rejected a covenant way of living, and therefore God's judgment is bitter fruit. And they can't stop Jeremiah. They try to kill him. They try to get rid of him. Why does the way of the guilty prosper? Jeremiah will ask. And yet, the Lord stays with him. And Jeremiah still cares for the people, even though he proclaims judgment. In chapter 14, the people enter into a long period of drought. And Jeremiah prays for those people. But during that long period of drought, it becomes obvious whose faith is in God and whose faith is in their own strength. Because even in the midst of the drought, those who have faith continue to persevere. Whereas those who have relied on their human and mortal flesh begin to despair. This hits home with me. Part of my ministry was in a major time of drought in Texas, reaching its height in 2011 with record days of triple digits, massive fire complex burnings. It was so bad that it drove the wildlife from West Texas east in search of water. Bears started popping up near Austin, which they would never have come that close to a major city. The wildlife was driven because of desperation. And when you drove along and you looked, the only places that were green were those things that were planted near old, dry creek beds that still had water deep in the ground. And those trees sent their roots to find that water. Normally in West Texas, when droughts hit, you burn the cactus so that it knocks off the spines on the outside so the cattle can eat the moisture on the inside of the cactus. However, even the cactus were dried up. The saying went at the time that there was a revival that was held to pray for rain. And people were asked to bring objects of faith. Some brought Bibles. Some brought crosses. They brought whatever they had as an object of faith. And then in the midst of the crowd, one boy walked up and opened an umbrella. This is the type of faith Jeremiah is talking about. Those who are planted by the streams, even in the midst of doubt, even in the midst of a drought, they open up the umbrella because they have faith that God will provide. Where does your faith lie in those seasons of drought in your life and in the life of your community?